Hi, my name is Rhona Jean Rynan. I'm Leonard Rynan's mom, and I also had a brother who was 13 months older than me, whom we were very close, called the Bobbsey twins. Hung around a lot together, and he developed schizophrenia at around age 13 or 14. So I'm a mom, I was a sister, and I've lived with schizophrenia, therefore, in my family for approximately 30 years. I don't think that any family member, mother, brother, sister, I don't think anyone can prepare themselves for that. I sometimes equate it to, my brother's experience, very much a grieving experience to that of the death of someone that you knew is now a very different person. And the grieving is immense. As a mother, it's very intense grieving. My brother's symptoms were very intense. He had visual and auditory hallucinations, and he often screamed at night. He would leave the house and just pack a bag and go off from Cape Breton to Halifax, and often be living on the streets. We wouldn't know where he was. We didn't know what drugs he was involved with, if he would come home alive. He made several attempts on his life. And then I distinctly remember that my brother started to display some anger. I didn't know what depression looked like then, but now I can look back and see the isolating from older friends and making new friends, acquaintances certainly were a part of his journey. His drugs, the substances that he took, I believe happened after the depression and the anger and the initial symptoms that we now know were schizophrenia. At age 17, I was with my brother on the beach. I went down to see him. He was camping overnight with a couple of guy friends, and they were doing marijuana in the tent. My brother was very in tune with my feelings as I was with his. Like I said, we were quite inseparable. So I walked into the tent, and after years of trying to help my brother connect the dots from his distorted reality, which I didn't really understand, but I just knew that was how I described it, was helping George connect the dots. It was very strenuous, very draining, as the only sister at home when his symptoms became quite worse. So I walked into that tent and I looked at my brother and I said, "George, you have to stop doing these drugs. They're changing you. I guess that's what's changing you, because I don't understand what's happening. But there's something happening." And I started to have tears come down my face at that point, which he, of course, at one time would be uncomfortable with, because we cared deeply for each other. And he just said, "Rhona, get out of the tent if you're going to be talking that way. You know, we're going to continue doing these drugs, and I just don't want you here. And don't tell my parents." That was often the message: don't tell my parents. And so do tell your parents. It's important to tell your parents what's happening. And I walked away from that tent, and each step felt like I was walking away from the person who used to be my soulmate at the time. We were so close. And I knew that our lives would forever change from that moment on. It would be very different with regards to how you can provide support when my brother was ill in the late 70s, early 80s and onward, in comparison to today. Today, there are medications out there that work phenomenally, especially on those positive symptoms, like we mentioned, the visual and auditory hallucinations, the delusions, the paranoia, the cognitive behavioral therapy, the dialectical behavior therapy that's there to help people who are experiencing a psychotic episode to break it down. So it's an attenuated rather than a full-blown conviction. And as well, the stigma out there is, I think, still very real. Mental health, as I have watched it evolve, or the mental health care system as I have watched it evolved over those decades. I can't believe I'm that old. Anyway, as I've watched that evolve, certainly the stigma for someone with depression, someone even today with manic depression, it's a little more talked about. But the stigma with schizophrenia is very real, and it hurts families, it hurts individuals. Support that as a parent, as a mom, that I've found very useful is a parent support group at the Royal Ottawa Hospital. They were, at first, because I am involved in the healthcare profession myself, I hesitated to go into a parent support group. But then after experiencing other people's ways of coping with schizophrenia in the home, with a loved one, and mostly what hurts most for any mom or dad is their child that they love who's suffering. And so to hear how other couples, who other moms and dads and brothers, sisters cope with these experiences is very helpful. It's very intuitive, it's very eye-opening. And as well, most support groups, parent support groups, do have a healthcare professional who is there to be able to provide information with regard to how best to work within the mental health care system, how to navigate within the mental health care system, and those tips are like gold. So things like dialectical behavior therapy and cognitive behavioral therapy are so crucial for someone with schizophrenia or a family experiencing a loved one with schizophrenia, to speak to a professional who can help them work through all these difficult challenges that families have. I still think that there definitely is such a shortage of accessing the right care, the right therapies that are available for people today, and yet so many people still suffer and don't know that these services are available, or they may be challenged financially and unable to afford what the system can offer. Medication is so imperative for people who are living with schizophrenia and will be for the rest of their lives. Medications have improved incredibly so today than they were 30 and 40 years ago. So today, a lot of the very excruciating symptoms, painful suffering that people with schizophrenia went through because of those symptoms can be treated. So I think what's needed is, for parents, we can't go back, maybe some people can, I hope, and be more present and put your work where your work should be. You work to live, not live to work. And your presence for your child who is suffering is so immensely important. It's just being there. It's being present in the moment, not thinking about work, not thinking about heading out on Friday night with your friends or whatever it might be. I'm not saying that those things aren't good. Activities are great. But when you are with your child, to be attentive to how they're feeling, what they're going through. If you're not present, then it's very difficult to pick up on those sometimes very subtle cues that teenagers show when they're not feeling well and they're experiencing either crisis or conflicts in their life. My joy really overruns many days now. Leonard has gone through counseling. Teenagers sometimes find that difficult to get involved with counseling and to be consistent with counseling. Leonard is taking his medication. His sleep hygiene is so important to how he feels within his illness. And so all of those things are really important. The joy that I feel today is that Leonard has been ill since 13, 14 with depression. Then came the suicidal ideation and attempts and substance abuse. And he has been sober now for over 2 years. He is excelling in a program of public relations. He is touching other people's lives who have schizophrenia, and the passion that he has to help others who have suffered in ways that only he knows, because that's his experience with schizophrenia. He's so willing and eager to support people. Having schizophrenia is still difficult, so Leonard needs to always be conscientious of how much he can take on with regard to stress. He's working now, 2 days now, maybe 3 days soon, with the Canadian Mental Health Association. Phenomenal work, especially combined with his computer programming experience in the past. And he's touching lives. I go to the gala, my joy, just seeing him up there and sharing with people his personal experience and seeing the crowd just giving him a standing ovation, because when he speaks, you could hear a pin drop, and he's speaking from the heart. The passion is so evident in the work that he does now. It's quite a joy as a parent, and we are so very, very proud of him.